Hey, welcome. My name is Rachel Smith, and this is the Natural Health Rising podcast. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the owner of Natural Health Rising, which is my online holistic functional medicine company where I help people who have autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery symptoms, and a whole host of other imbalances restore their health by natural means. On this podcast, you're going to hear conversations between myself and other health experts on functional medicine and general holistic health. My goal is to provide you with the tools you need in order to help you rise to your healthiest and happiest self.
All right, Monica. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about your personal story, really as to how you got into this career?
Yeah. Well, I struggled with digestive issues. My story is really in digestive dysfunction and chronic anxiety from the moment I can remember, really. I was a C-section, so I kind of started off not in the greatest way with my mother, and I was raised on a standard American diet and had probably maybe 40 rounds of antibiotics like throughout my entire life. And I do feel like that is very common. I hear that a lot from a lot of people. Lots of antibiotic treatments. So digestive issues was on the forefront of my life, on my mind. It was kind of my identity as well. I remember in high school getting nicknames with my friends because it was just always the center of it was just always the topic of conversation in my family because it ran in my family. And it was a way of coping with it, was just really talking about it and normalizing it essentially. So, the toilet ran my life. I would get sick after eating. Episodes, most of it was commuting to different places, like if I was on my way to an event or social event, or something like that, or in a long car ride. So digestive issues ran my life. And when I was 22, I went to school for dance. I was a dance major, BFA. And then I went to New York City and I went to pursue a career in professional dance. And needless to say, life got even more hectic than it was before, and chronic stress just became so overwhelming for me, trying to find a job and pay rent, and then getting thrown into the dance world with competition and rejection. I was also in a emotionally abusive relationship with an older man when I was in my early 20s. And so my gut issues were debilitating. And it had gotten to the point where I could no longer just tolerate it, and I think a lot of people who have gut issues, they're just health issues in general, their tolerance to pain is very high, right? And so I reached that threshold and I saw a gastroenterologist in New York. She gave me a breath test and I tested severely positive for SIBO, hydrogen dominant SIBO. Like the baseline was, I think, at like 60 or something ridiculous. And then it went way up from there. And I remember in that moment feeling a little bit relieved. I was like, oh my gosh, there's answers. And I have a solution to my problem now. And so the doctor who I did like, she gave me a solution, which was antibiotics, more antibiotics. After the rounds I probably did 1 to 2 rounds of antibiotics for my entire life, like even through teen years and young adult years. But so I went on the antibiotic called rifaximin, which is like kind of a go-to for SIBO. And that did give me relief. But it came back. And at this point, I'm, 23, 24 years old. I'm in the middle of my dance career. I do not want to slow down. I am as eager and as hungry as I can be to get a dance job. So I relied on that prescription, that antibiotic, for as long as I possibly could. So I would just go back to the doctor and she'd give it to me. And I did that for about 5 years. So it was like It was like relapse and then
Wow.
back, and then I'd get relief for maybe a month or two. I had no idea what was going on with my body, nutrition wise. I didn't understand how my lifestyle impacted my health issues, but I just didn't have the time or to think about it. And I didn't want to, and I worked in restaurants as well to pay my rent. So, bartending, I was around a lot of alcohol, late nights. So basically, I went through that. It was tolerable. And then the insurance ran out. I was 26, and thank God I could do it until 26, but I was on my dad's health insurance until then. And this prescription was thousands of dollars out of pocket. So I realized after that was no longer available to me, and I was still dealing with the same issues. And I was transitioning away from dance, probably around 27, 28 years old, and into a new relationship. And that's when I kind of had enough. And I had decided if anything is going to change, I have to change it myself. And I started to do a lot of education about the microbiome. And it was kind of shocking to realize, number one, to realize all of the correlation once I started to understand the microbiome and how food impacts us and stress impacts us, and how the microbiome is really responsible for so many functions in the body. But I think the bigger revelation was that I really had no clue how to take care of myself prior to this education. And so that's what led me into really feeling in my gut that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to educate people about how they can heal themselves while I'm healing myself, while I'm healing myself as well. And I enrolled in FDN, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, and it just went down the many different rabbit holes that I think are inevitable to go down to try to heal yourself, find the right answer. But there were so many solutions that I didn't even know existed. So the past about 2.5 years has been me really navigating those solutions, first for myself and learning through functional lab testing, learning through putting myself on multiple protocols, and actually coming out of it here. Now we're about maybe a year into really doing that myself. And I don't have the SIBO, I don't have the IBS, and chronic anxiety is way down. Still, it's a practice, still always learning how to continue to maintain my health. But yeah, that's kind of my story.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm sure many listeners can relate. And we actually have a lot of funny little things in common about our own health stories, like same age timeline, same thing with the restaurants and bartending and the stress in the early 20s.
Right.
And man, stress really messes you up. So let's talk about what is SIBO, though, for people who don't know.
Mm-hmm. SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So there are many ways that our gut can be out of balance. We have trillions of bacteria, yeast, fungi that live they should be in a place of symbiosis, of harmony, of balance, where we have the right amount of everything and they're all functioning well. But what can happen when we have dysfunction from our mouth all the way down to the colon, if there's anything wrong on the way down there, it can throw off that microbiome and that balance. And so with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, you get bacteria that becomes overgrown in the small intestine. And it really should not be there. The small intestine does have some native bacteria, but it can become a problem when you have either from your mouth, your oral microbiome, or from your food or pathogens that are making it past your stomach acid into the small intestine, or from your colon up into the small intestine. So that's small intestinal bacteria. It's kind of like a hot topic too. It's like, it's been funny following it for the past 2 years because it was a little bit new. And now I have to say my whole idea and my principles and philosophies and education around it has actually changed a lot since the beginning of my education on SIBO.
Okay. Let's talk about that. What's
Yeah.
changed? What are these new things that you're resonating with?
Well, I guess maybe we could start with what the consensus really is about like healing the gut. And
Yeah.
if somebody goes to a practitioner, even like a conventional medicine doctor or a functional medicine doctor, what are they going to get? Like, what is their journey that they're going to be sent on in order to try to find a solution?
Mm-hmm.
And my original education, so I did FDN, but then I also did a SIBO mastery course with Dr. Narelle Jacoby, who I do really love. And that course taught me so much beyond, and I'll get into that too, like beyond just the initial what you do to try to find SIBO and then deal with SIBO. But what I'll say is like the general trajectory is you test. So you take a breath test and lactulose, glucose breath test. And that is going to allow us to be able to see how much hydrogen or methane gas that you're producing in the small intestine, approximately, because that's when we can kind of see where that solution is throughout the body, and you can see how much hydrogen you're producing, how much you're breathing out. So that's like the diagnostic test for SIBO. And then once you get your results back, let's say you're positive for methane, or you're positive for high methane SIBO, then you're kind of sent down the specific protocol. So you're going to take antimicrobials that are specific for methane, like oregano or berberine or allicin. Maybe you'll get some digestive support. Maybe you did a stool test and you find out that your digestive markers are poor, like you have poor pancreatic enzyme or hinting towards low stomach acid, all this stuff, right? And then you do a protocol to address the test results.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense to us, right? It makes sense to us that this is a logical way that we're going to deal with a problem. A phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 test, and then find the appropriate protocol, support digestion. And then usually there's like this repair phase of reintroducing food. Because maybe you were on a low FODMAP diet, or maybe you were on a restrictive diet, but now we can start to reintroduce foods and maybe do reintroduce probiotics or introduce probiotics to try to reseed and repopulate the gut. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to chime in there with what you feel like, because you work with clients as well, and like what the consensus is as far as how people go about healing the gut. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Mm-hmm. So I think you pretty much did a great job at giving the broad overview of it. It's normally like the 4 R's or the 5 R's, depending upon whose standards you're looking at. You know, like remove, right? We're removing the infections and things like that. We're repairing, re-inoculating, and all those different aspects.
Reseeding. I know they all are R's, aren't they? Reseeding and
yeah. And that's totally all great. But yeah, it definitely goes much beyond just addressing lab results for sure, which I'm sure you have a lot to say about that. And I do as well. But yeah, for me, this is what we do as FDNs, or should be doing, in the holistic space, is looking at lifestyle factors, right? Yes, the nutrition part is important to dial that in, and get to a phase where we're eating anti-inflammatory foods and things like that. Maybe that person has candida. You're not going to want to be eating a lot of sugar, things like that. That's going to look different for everybody. But then we have things like exercise and stress management and dealing with I know you're really big into the nervous system. Like, that's huge. The gut and the brain are connected. We know that much. So yeah, go ahead and keep going with whatever else you'd like to add in there.
Well, when I started working with people, I was putting them down that path because, again, it makes sense. It's like a mathematical way of thinking about the body and healing, and people like that. They can see it, they can visualize it. So I was looking at their breath test and setting them down the appropriate protocol. And then I would find that they would just kind of plateau. And it was like, the bloating is still there. The gas is still there. We're doing everything we can with the diet. and they're following it appropriately. And I also felt this distance, like I was just shouting information at them. Like it was just, okay, do this, take this, take this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to stop in that moment and think two things. Number one was, well, how did I get to where I am? How did I never followed a seriously restrictive diet. I mean, I tried to do low FODMAP. I tried to do like fully gluten-free, fully dairy-free, but I just didn't. I changed the way I ate a lot. And I never really followed a very, 6 weeks take this and 3 weeks take that. And so I started to think, well, what was it that really helped my body heal? And that led me to the next question, which was, I had to start making decisions that were going to support my body healing itself. Mm-hmm. So regardless of the supplements, regardless of the diet, those can be used as tools, but they seem to always be the bulk of what we focus on, where there's this whole other kind of spectrum of how we can start to inch the body and give it what it needs to function better, so that from the mouth to the colon, we're addressing that because the whole body is functioning better. And does that make sense? Where it's like you have all these systems, they're all connected, and we think about the way we think about protocols is very linear, but the body is not at all. The body it doesn't work like a machine where you do this and then we get these results. So we have to start thinking about healing from that non-linear, non-specific, which is very FDN, holistic perspective. But then that's where I was like, okay, well, what does that actually mean? And what did that mean for me? And that's when I came to the nervous system and to changing my perspective on how I was dealing with my diet and supplementation as well. So when it comes to the nervous system, maybe I'll just give a little brief rundown of a little education. And I love Stanley Rosenberg's book, Accessing the Healing Powers of the Vagus Nerve. He follows the polyvagal theory, and when I really learned about the polyvagal theory, it really did change a lot for me, because I was always taught we have the sympathetic nervous system. So we have the autonomic nervous system, and within that we have the sympathetic, and then the parasympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest. So we want to be in the parasympathetic rest and digest state, right? But what Stanley brought to my attention, and the people before him, was that there was a third element of the nervous system of the vagus nerve, which is called the dorsal vagal branch. And then there's the ventral vagal branch. So you have three. You have the sympathetic, which is the spinal nerves down the spine. And then the dorsal vagal branch, which is more of like your primitive branch of the vagus nerve. And then the ventral vagal branch, which is the socially engaged, feeling safe part that needs to be activated in order for us to be functioning well. And when you think about the responsibilities of the autonomic nervous system, it is the conductor of everything that happens in the body. It is the automatic process that we don't have to think about our heart beating. We don't have to think about secreting our stomach acid and our pancreatic enzymes. So if there is a problem within that nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, it doesn't matter what you're eating. It doesn't matter what you're, taking. You can take as many enzymes as you want. That is where we need to start looking. So when I understood the polyvagal theory and really identified, I failed to mention this before, the dorsal, so we have fight or flight, sympathetic, we have ventral vagal, which is socially engaged and safe, but then the dorsal vagal is that freeze and shut down. So you can think about like a mouse being confronted with a snake and how it freezes. And I really identified with that, because I always felt like, I am in fight or flight. I'm very anxious, but I'm also really numb. I'm also really apathetic. I'm also really like can't function anymore. Like feel just things are not working, right? And so I would shift between those two states. So when I understood about the basics of the nervous system, that's where I started to turn my attention to with my self protocols and how I can stimulate the proper part of the nervous system, the ventral vagal state. And you can do that in so many ways. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the past year, is how can I include this nervous system support and retraining, along with multiple other things that we can talk about as well, in order to help my clients, and it will basically help their bodies heal themselves and function well, so that they're better received, or they're receiving these protocols better. Like it's not just like throwing things at them. So yeah.
Yeah, I am 100% on the exact same page as you. I do so many practices in regards to stimulating the vagus nerve, and because I grew up very anxious, panic attacks often throughout my life, just serious nervous system issues, major shutdowns. I can't remember the name of the book. I want to just say it's called the polyvagal theory book. And I remember reading about the dorsal aspect, and I was like, oh yeah, that's actually me. Sometimes I'm just complete shutdown mode. So let's get into, for people who like they're doing all these other things, they're changing their diet, they're taking these supplements, but they're not seeing these total changes. So we're saying they need to move into really regulating their nervous system. Well, what are ways that they can do that? Let's just start there with
Right.
some basic tips for them.
So I take an approach to this that might be a little bit different from some other people who do nervous system retraining.
Okay.
Because I believe that in order to really retrain the nervous system, or maybe even the limbic system where we hold our emotions, we have to focus on the emotions. We have to focus on emotional health. And this is where the energetic part of this comes into. So, and maybe I'll just give you a little bit of a rundown of what I do, and then we can talk about the origin of that as well, just to answer your question. So what I do with people, and everything I do, people can do themselves. Everything I've learned, I've researched myself from a self-therapeutic standpoint, and I've read books or I've taken courses. So it's not anything that you need to spend tons of money on doing, but you do need obviously the time if you wanted to do this yourself. But I have taken various self-therapies and made them into one session that I call Move to Heal. And in these sessions, we will do basic vagal nerve exercises. So, I could even, they're in the back of Stanley Rosenberg's book, The Accessing Healing Powers of the Vagus Nerve, and it's actually free online. And you can look at his exercises in the back of the book. If you don't want to read the whole book, you can actually look at the simple stuff that he does. But he likes to use the eyes and move the eyes and hold them in a position, keeping the head still, so that we're working the muscles of the eyes, because they're neurologically connected to those cranial nerves at the base of the skull there, which can help to, basically what can happen is that cervical spine can be shifted, which is actually like turning on our sympathetic nervous system. So it's like a switch that's turned on. And when the cervical spine is in this specific placement, then it's very hard for us to be in this socially engaged, safe state. So his exercises will work the eye muscles to help actually shift the nerves, the occipital nerves of the spine, or the base of the skull, to try to shift us into the ventral vagal state. So his exercises are something that people can look into, and I teach them at a very basic level as well. I would also say simple, and people hear this all the time, I know, but breathing. Simple, diaphragmatic. My favorite thing is the 4, 4, and 4, where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and you're feeling your diaphragm and your belly move. That's a very easy one that can shift you out of sympathetic or dorsal and into ventral. And then I'll see if I can think of one more that is specific to the nervous system. And without getting too much into detail. I would say maybe tapping as well. So there are, you can do a lot of different tapping specifically with the chest. You can do some pulsing in the solar plexus, and that can help, again, shift you out of that state. And then there's the basics of the vagal nerve, of gargling, cold therapy. You know, like in the morning, you wake up and you can put your face in a bowl of cold water. That's like one of the best things that you can do to expose your body to those cold temperatures. It's one of the best ways that you can shift out of the bad state of the nervous system and into the good. But the way that I do it, and the way that I have learned with myself, is to connect to my biofield and to connect to my emotional body and my electrical body. So emotions are energy in motion. And when I started to understand the idea of how emotions can be fleeting, they can be temporary, but they can also be stored, and they can cause stagnancy, and they can cause blockages in the body. And so when I started to tune into that, along with the basic vagal nerve exercises, the change was so incredible. It was like, I can't even, it's hard to explain it because it's just hard to put it into words. But basically what I'll tell you is last year, I had gotten COVID in like maybe July. And I have a feeling it might have had to do with COVID. I'm not sure. But I had the worst anxiety I've ever had, and it impacted me cognitively. So I could not keep my train of thought. I couldn't do anything like this. Something like this still gives me a little bit of anxiety. I'm able to work through it with the tools that I have. But a year ago, or maybe not, a year and a half ago, I couldn't do this. It was literally like I was in a survival state and not able to ground myself and not able to come back to my memory in a way. So there was something going on that was shifting me. Again, the nervous system was shifting out of balance. And so doing these practices with the energetic element, and when I say the energetic element, that means a lot of different things. And we can talk about that too. It's just various simple self-therapy exercises, acupressure, pressing on certain pressure points of the body, breath work, I'm certified in a specific technique called water up, fire down. That's very gut centered. So anyway, doing all of that has helped me tremendously, but we can also talk about how it relates to the gut as well, and what it has to do with SIBO. But I don't know, I'll pause there if you have any questions about what I just said.
No, that's all good. I love it. I love I think a newer one for me that I've never used is the shifting of the eyes. So that's one I'll have to try. Is there a specific pattern that someone can we walk through one right now?
Yeah, I'll do it with you, or not with you, but you can do it with me too. Yeah. So the most basic one is to clasp your hands behind your head.
Okay.
And then you feel your skull in your hands.
Okay.
And then you can see your elbows in your peripheral vision, right? So they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So keep your face forward and just move your eyes to the right. And you hold them here and you breathe into your diaphragm. And you're holding them, looking to that right elbow, keeping the face forward. And you do this for about 30 to 60 seconds. And you allow yourself to either sigh, swallow, or yawn. If you might feel like saliva pooling in your mouth. And then you can come back to the center. I close my eyes down. And then you can go to the other side. And you want to make sure your eyes are really alert and open. So it's like you're activating the muscles of the eyes. And then you just breathe and hold. And you might get dizzy. We'll talk about that in a second. And you breathe. And then you can close your eyes. And then I usually do some kind of spinal thing here, but you can kind of notice if that brings you into any different state. You might have to do it a couple times, but that's like the basic vagal nerve exercise.
Okay. I feel it. I feel a little bit more relaxed. just with that.
So do I.
And that only took 1 minute. That's insane. See, I love stuff like this because it's very, very small tools that people can do. And it's a massive shift, right?
Right.
Out of an anxious state or a scared state or anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
you don't realize how those little moments of feeling anxious or whatever is happening in your mind is impacting your gut. I mean, for me, I mentioned in my story how it was always the commute. So the hour or two, it's okay.
I'm yawning now.
Oh my God, that's great. Your autonomic nervous system is shifting. And when I'm in my sessions with people, I'm like, don't just yawn, let it out, like anything that comes out. That's great. That's funny. Anyway, like I would notice an hour or two leading up to leaving my house, I would start to have anxiety because I'd have to eat. And then there would be the bathroom anxiety. And then what would happen is I would get on the train to go to work and I would start having diarrhea cramps or just like cramping. And I would be, it was just like constant, like what? I was just at home. I was fine. Why? I just ate an hour ago. Why am I getting sick? These tools are designed to mitigate that so that once you start to feel that, you have something to turn to that can shift you out of that, which is going to help your digestion. It's going to help regulate the function of digestion and detoxification. So it can be incredibly effective for sure.
That's amazing. And you started talking about connecting to the electrical body. So go into details with that. How can we connect to the electrical body?
Well, so in my story, because when I was experiencing this chronic anxiety, I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. I need to figure this out. So I stumbled into a yoga studio. Well, it's not really a yoga studio, but it was a Qigong, which is the Korean Qigong, kind of a Tai Chi center. I don't even really know how to explain it. And I started doing these classes there. And what I realized very quickly was that as a dancer, I had been doing this my whole life. I just had been thinking about it very differently. As a dancer, I would always be connecting to the energy around me and other people. And it was very easy for me to kind of tap into that biofield in a way. So when I was exposed to this method, it really changed everything for me because they were exploring vibration and breath work and very gut-centered exercises that was about recirculating the energy in the body. Because again, like I said, you can become stagnant and blocked. They say that you can have a very hot head and a very cold belly. And so you need to recirculate the water energy, the water fire energy of the body. So I started to train with them, and it was just a very serendipitous experience because I was trying to help myself, and here I'm in this studio that was exactly what I needed in that time, and it was so related to digestion and gut health. So I basically became certified in order to teach that simple method, and I'll get into that right now, but it kind of moved into acupressure and all of these other self therapies that you can tap into your biofield. So basically, so do you want me to say like what it is, what the biofield is? Maybe I'll start there and then Yeah. So we have an electrical current, and one of the best ways that I can explain this is when you get an EKG, your heart puts out an electrical pulse. And if it weren't for electricity within you, that your heart wouldn't be beating, And so they say that the difference between a dead body and an alive body is the electrical current within us. And you can't see it, but you can absolutely feel it. And there's mass to it as well. And so what I teach is the most simple basic level of introducing that to people, because once you become familiar with your biofield, and we can do a little exercise really quickly to do that, then you are able to build your own intuition, listen to your body's messages, and then apply them, you're able to really understand, like, I think the biggest thing is feeling confident in taking care of yourself when you experience this closeness with your body. And if you have a problem, you're not going to be looking outward, you're going to be looking inward. So that's at the most simple level, it is kind of holding space for this exploration of your electrical current, and then finding and identifying different parts of the body that might be blocked or might be holding something. If I'm working with somebody who's had a lot of trauma, we start very simple. I'm not a therapist. I don't talk. I'm not solving people's problems. I'm just holding space for them to explore that on their own. And then I give them exercises to work through that in whatever is appropriate for them. So we can do a little thing right now, and we all can feel it.
Yeah.
So I want you to
let's do
shake
it.
your hands.
Okay.
Shake your hands, really. Just
Wait,
shake them,
go
shake them,
take-
shake them, shake them. I know, I have my ring on too. Okay, shake, shake, shake. Just breathe as you shake, and just kind of like breathe out your mouth. In your nose, out your mouth. Keep shaking for 3, for 2, for 1. Come to a place of total stillness and feel your hands. Bring your hands to facing each other and feel that tingle. Just that tingle around your body, around your hands. It might be concentrated in your palms and your fingertips, wherever it is. Just notice that. That is your biofield. That is your electrical current that you can cultivate, and you can feel that physically. And it's concentrated in the palms for a reason, but that's the best way that we can, again, it's shifting us into that parasympathetic. You can look at it from all the different angles. You can think, okay, from a very logical, scientific point, we're shifting into ventral vagal state. I think of it as we're moving into a more connected place that is calmer, safer, and now our body feels safe in order to heal itself. So if we have gut issues, if we have an overgrowth of bacteria, well, it's not going to be a welcome place for pathogens and for overgrowth if our body is feeling safe and functioning well. So that's why it can pull us out of that hamster wheel that we're on all the time. So,
right.
Yeah.
So do you have people how can I take that and apply that to my daily life if I'm somebody who's struggling with health issues? Just randomly, like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Let me do some shaking techniques.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what I do with myself is I have a structure to the sessions, essentially. So when people, if you were to take one session with me, then I would just kind of show you the different exercises. And then I would tell you, well, okay, if you are feeling anxious, and also what do you identify? What resonates with you more? Do you like the tapping? Do you like the breathing? And so that becomes your tool. And you realize, okay, I'm going to tap, I'm going to feel, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to shake, I'm going to vibrate, I'm going to release, I'm going to do what feels good to get out that stagnancy. And also it's about the meditation aspect of it as well. So you could do any of it. You could do it for a minute, you could do it for an hour. It's about the consistency of it. It's a practice.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Let's switch gears a little bit. What's your opinion on things like probiotics and fiber? Are these things that we really need to be focusing on, or are they not actually helping our digestion?
I'm glad you asked that. Yes, so I am actually a huge probiotic fan. From the beginning, I followed Dr. Michael Ruscio and Microbiome Labs, Krishnan, can't remember his last name now, but the leading doctor of Microbiome Labs, and a few other people that I'm blanking on right now, who have basically kind of shooken up the SIBO world and started to introduce probiotics either before or right away during doing like an antimicrobial protocol. And the reason why I love probiotics so much, especially if they're high quality, if they're taken at the right amount, with the, there's definitely a strategy to it. I hear a lot of people who they'll say they'll take one capsule a day and they didn't feel anything, but it's about the strain, it's about the amount, and the way that you take it as well, like the dosage as well. But it can be helpful in that whole idea of shifting the terrain. So yes, probiotics are transient, except for some of the spore-based ones. Those can hang around a little bit for a while and definitely help to reseed and repopulate. But on their way through the digestive tract, they can help to build or increase the, I guess we could say, beneficial bacteria that is out of balance. And when you can increase that beneficial bacteria, then that's going to decrease the pathogens and the opportunistic guys. So this whole idea of ratios has really changed the way I think about SIBO, because when we're killing off with antimicrobials, or even when we're supporting with digestive enzymes or hydrochloric acid or any other digestive support, sure, we can be reducing the number of pathogens or reducing the number of bad bacteria or methane gas or hydrogen gas. We can be substituting and stimulating, but in my opinion, this is my opinion and from my experience, the only thing that's going to set the digestive system right and reduce the number of bacteria in the small intestine is to achieve balance between the bacteria in the gut. So by killing off, you're not achieving balance. You're just killing off, and then the environment is still the same. So if we can come at it with supplements that help to increase the good guys, diet to increase the good guys, and when I say good guys, I mean the ones that keep the other guys in check. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is a hard concept because it makes sense, again, to kill off the guys that are overgrown. But we need those guys too. We need those bacteria as well.
Right.
So my approach has been everything that we do with supplements, which probiotics definitely falls in this category, is how can we bring the microbiome to balance, which is going to balance out the digestive tract, meaning that the gut lining will become repaired, the stomach acid that, of course, there's other things that you can do to help that, but that's where I kind of come at it as far as supplementation, is almost looking at it from an addition standpoint rather than a restriction standpoint.
Okay. So obviously there are so many different types of probiotic strains, doses. We've got the spore-based, the not, we've got yeast and all of these other things. Do you have some standard recommendations or standard things that you use, standard doses and strains?
Yes. And I do want to just say this, that I'm not against antimicrobials at all. I do use those and I've used them myself, but I think it needs to be monitored depending on the person. And that's why we test. So I'm a big test, don't guess person as well, because again, you can throw probiotics at someone, but if you don't really see what's going on, then that achieving balance is going to be tough. And you could be making things worse if you're introducing antimicrobials to somebody who has a very low bacterial count. So your question was the probiotics. So there are three kind of different types. We've got the spore-based. So that's like your bacillus. We've got the lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. So those are your blends of probiotics that are the most popular. So if you go to Whole Foods or if you go to your drugstore, you're going to see mostly lactobacillus and bifidobacterium blends. And then we have Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a probiotic yeast. So from my experience and from my research, and actually I have this book right next to me because I think a lot of people could learn a lot from it. It's Healthy Gut, Healthy You by Dr. Michael Ruscio. He's really big on probiotics, but also big on the research behind probiotics and talking about all the meta-analysis and the studies behind probiotics. But anyway, using those three at the same time with the spore-based ones, I hear that you don't have to use so much, especially if you get like microbiome labs, because they're so great and they have such high quality probiotics. You can do two capsules a day. But with the lactobacillus, you can go pretty high. And I've used like 200 to 300 billion CFUs a day, which could be 6 to 12 capsules a day. I mean, that's, again, this is not medical, advice. Please speak to your practitioner. But just to give people an idea of how, I mean, our microbiome has trillions of bacteria, yeast, and fungi. So you can handle a couple billion. You can, it's okay. And I'll get to this in a second, the Saccharomyces boulardii can also be increased to, depending on what you're trying to address. If you have like C. diff, or if you have low secretory IgA, like low immune function, then I do it in higher doses. It could be 6 capsules a day, or like maybe like 2 to 4, depending on if it's like 50 billion. But the biggest thing here is titration and sequencing. So you don't want to just hammer all those probiotics in one day, especially if you're really sensitive and you're going to get a lot of bloating. So you would want to start with 1 cap, and then the next day add another one, and work your way up to your tolerance. You could even open the capsules, and you can sprinkle like 1/4 of the capsule in your food or in water. But you really want to, for me, if I feel like I'm getting sick, or when I was in Mexico, I had all my probiotics with me, and I did feel a little funny, and I took like 10 in one day, and boom, I felt fine. So
Nice.
But again, speak to your practitioner, but just so you know, it is not unheard of, and it can be done safely and effectively in high doses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely not something to just try randomly. And I think that is the issue with probiotics and just the general population, is no one knows what the heck they're doing. They just know that they're supposed to take it for their gut. And so they just go and they buy whatever on the shelf, and then they take it and they're like, I don't know, it didn't work, or I'm not sure if it's working. There's definitely some science behind what to take, when, what's the dose. So yeah, thanks for going into that a little bit more.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Well, let's see. So got a little bit of time left. Do you want to go into, maybe let's go into a couple more things that are overlooked when healing the gut. So we've talked about the nervous system. We've talked about energetic healing. Let's also talk a little bit about frequency. So when you're saying you use frequency, in my mind, I'm thinking of sound healing. Is that where you go? Like, so what are you using when it comes to frequency?
I'm actually, I've partnered with a frequency-minded music company called Listening to Smile.
Okay.
And I should remind you about, or because people can buy their albums if they want, but and I include that in my Move to Heal session. So the entire session, and thank you for bringing that up, is done to specific frequencies. So it's really cool. And it's something I've just gotten into these past like 6 months, and reading this book, Vibrational Healing Through the Chakras, which I definitely recommend, Joy Gardner. Different. So everything has a frequency, and even down to our organs and our cells. And we have to achieve, well, we don't have to, but we aim to achieve this resonance, this harmony. So it's the same thing as like a musical instrument. When something's out of tune, sometimes different parts of our body, our gut, from from our stomach to the small intestines, we could have, it goes along with the same thing as the biofield and the energetic aspect of healing. Frequencies are the same. And so the music will help to bring us to that in tune, getting in tune with ourselves. And there are certain frequencies, like I think it's 528 hertz, which is known as like the frequency of love. And so if you listen to these frequencies, they can help change your mood. They can help change the way that you actually look around at life. And 432 is the Schumann resonance, the resonance of the earth, the resonance of the human brain. And I was listening to that one earlier to kind of prepare for this, calm myself down, center myself. And so that is how I use frequencies, and I'm going to continue to move in that direction. But my platform is online, everything's virtual. So, but it would be really cool to get into tuning forks one day. That's kind of one of my goals, is to learn more about how to include frequency and resonancy into my practice.
I love it. I'm really big into sound healing, and I actually own some tuning forks and sound bowls and things like that. I haven't, the tuning forks are interesting. I'm definitely still figuring those out, but I love the sound bowls. That's so cool that you incorporate that in the movement session. So you're really doubling up on everything. You've got the nervous system going, you got the frequencies. So I love that.
And the music has really changed the game, because it on its own, it's amazing. So you can listen to the music and not move. You can just breathe, and it's doing enough. And I just had a client recently who is very sick, and she's young, and another element to it is kind of my intuitive guide of what I want to do with different people. And with her, I was like, let's just turn this on. Let's just turn this music on, turn off the video, and just do what you need to. Just, when was the last time you actually sat and listened to a song? I mean, I know I don't, or I haven't, because of life is crazy, and we don't sometimes just sit and listen. And anyway, we did that for about 5 minutes, and she came back to me, and she was like emotionally releasing, and she's like, is this supposed to happen? And I said, yes. Yes, that's exactly the point. Is you don't want to hold that, you want, and music has the ability to allow you to release that, which is so huge for healing. Your body can release what it doesn't need.
That's so amazing. So I caught so many good books and things you just recommended in this episode. So I'm going to link all of that up. I think, let me make sure I got Connect to the Electrical Body. No, that's not it. Healthy Gut, Healthy You. We've got Listening to Smile. That's the audio one.
Listening to Smile is the music company. And you can get 40% off with my code BetterHealth.
Okay, perfect. And I've got some other books.
We can put that in there.
Yeah, we can put that all in there. Great. So one thing too, I like to ask everybody before we close up is, if you could leave our listeners with just one action that they could take this week to help them live a healthier, happier life, what would that be?
I would say release the idea of perfection with healing. So if you're, we're coming out of the holidays, even though it's like end of January. Don't worry so much about what you've done in your past. If you drank alcohol, if you, binged on some cake, just realize that healing is not a linear process. And you can feel great for a while, and then things can go back. It's about consistency, and it's about learning from your mistakes, or learning from your own body and what it's telling you. So release the idea of being perfect, or putting pressure on yourself, or deadlines, or this and that, and allow some imperfection and exploration throughout your journey. And breathe through your diaphragm. That's another one. Breathe into the belly.
Yes, breathe. That's another topic I wanted to get into with you a little bit more, but it sounds like we might have to do a part 2, because there's so many other things we could go into.
I know.
But thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. You can share. So we did talk about your programs and everything. If there's any additional information you want to give about those, or anything that we missed, go ahead and share that. And then where people can reach out to you if they want to work with you or have any questions.
Yeah. And thank you for allowing me to say this. So I'm going to offer your listeners 15% off of a session pack, a Move to Heal pack session package. So you can do a 3-session, or you can do a 6-session, and the promo code is MOVE15, and we'll include that. If people wanted to try that and try 3 or 6 sessions with me, where we do the nervous system retraining, we do the energetic biofield meditation, frequency, mind, and music, but it's definitely tailored to you and your needs. I offer free consultations as well. So if you're not sure, just I can link to my scheduling, and you can meet me in person and we can talk about options, because I offer full health coaching programs, which include the Move to Heal sessions. And I do a la carte lab testing as well. So we can run a test and we can do a one-off interpretation. And the best place for you to follow me and to kind of stay with me, because I do have a lot of things going on, is going to be either getting on my email list, which we can link to that as well, or just follow me on Instagram, which is Better Health by Monica. Very generic. I'm going to change my brand coming up this year. Everything's going to change in the next coming months. So stay with me.
Hey, I like it. Better Health by Monica. That's where you can find her. Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for watching the episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment and share it with a friend who really needs to hear it. Because when you share this information, you're also going to help other people level up their health. And if you or somebody else you know wants to work on their health and they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, feel free to reach out to me to apply to work together. Thanks for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.